Okay, well here's our section 3.1c video. We're talking about the rectangular coordinate system in the chapter in this section. In this specific video we're going to talk about plotting points, and we're going to talk about getting points from a graph. So we're going to go here and we're going to go fast forward kind of through some of the stuff that we've seen already. We've seen that, we've seen that, we've seen that, and that. Here we are, I guess. So now we're going to talk about plotting points in the rectangular coordinate system. Kind of a review here of what we did in the previous video as we talked about the number line and the two number lines that kind of make up the rectangular coordinate system. So if we're talking about the rectangular coordinate system, we're talking about two different number lines, the x-axis and the y-axis. If we're going to graph points, if we're given a point like this, we would have to graph the x part first, kind of move along the x-axis first, and then move along the y-axis next. And that will tell us where we plot a point. So if we're given a point like 1, 2, we'd move 1 in the x direction and then 2 in the y direction. If we want to make it clearer, I suppose we can put a 1 right here, a 1 and a 2 for the x-axis, or sorry, for the y-axis. So if we're graphing this point, we'd move 1 to the in the positive direction for the x, and then 1, 2 in the positive direction for the y, because our y tells us positive 2 direction, positive 1, positive 2. And that would be our point. So let's get some practice with graphing some of these points. So let's go and plot point number A, point letter A. It's, if you need to, you can put x right here and y right there and say, all right, well, I'm going to graph my x first and then my y next. And keep in mind that we will go and label our x-axes. We don't have to, but I'm going to label, there's my x. And here's my y, just for fun. And oh, by the way, here's my positive x direction. Here's my negative x direction. Here's my positive y direction on this axis. Here's my negative y direction on, again, my y-axis. And keep in mind, we're always measuring from our origin. Origin is 0, 0, where these number lines, the number line of x is going to be 0, the number line of y is going to be 0. That's our origin, and that's where we count from. So if my point that I'm graphing is right there, 4, 5, you go 4 in positive x direction. From our origin, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, and we pause. And then we've got to remember that from here, I've got to go 5 in the y direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And right there would be our point. That is point letter A, right there. And that A is actually 4, 5. And you don't necessarily need to write A as that. You don't necessarily need to write 4, 5 as right there as that point, because we understand that if we're graphing that 4, 5, and that's our point A, well, we're just going to graph 1, 2, 3, 4 in the x direction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the y direction. That's our point. So let's try another one and say, all right, I'm going to try my point letter B is negative 4, negative 5. How does that differ? Well, over here in our blue point, point A, we had point A is 4, 5. This one is negative 4, negative 5. So for the green point B, again, we start with our origin B here. Sorry, we start with the origin here, and we count negative 4 in the x direction. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, we're going in the negative direction because this is going to be the negative direction. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4. And we pause, and then we go negative 5 in the y direction. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. And there's our point, negative 4, negative 5. And that would be our B point. Right there is B. Negative 4 in the x direction, negative 5 in the y direction. So go ahead, and I'm going to ask you to pause the video here and just kind of real quickly decide where C and D, E, F, and G are going to land. Keep in mind that some of these are going to have negative, positive, positive, negative. We're going to have fractions. We're going to have negative and 0. We're going to have 0, 0. And we're going to have pi is actually 3.14, 1.1. So graph some of those on your own. Pause the video, and then we'll get back together. Alright, so now that you've paused it, graphed those, that should be pretty straightforward because really we're kind of working with a number line in the x direction and a number line in the y direction. So I'm going to graph these all. Let's see, we'll try to graph them in, you know what, let's graph them in black. Alright, so if I've got C, point C, I got negative 1, positive 3. Negative 1 in the x direction, and if you need to, you can write down x and write down y so you don't confuse them. X is going to go negative 1 in the x direction, then positive 3, 1, 2, 3 in the y direction. Right there should be a point C. If we're going to do D, there's D, 3, comma, negative 1. Start with the origin. 1, 2, 3 in the x direction, negative 1 in the y direction. Right there is our point letter D. 3 in the positive x direction, negative 1 in the y direction. If we're going with E, these get a little trickier, but really not too difficult. We're going to go negative 1/2, or sorry, positive 1/2 in the x direction. So it would be somewhere along this line here, because that's all those values there would be positive x. X is 1/2. And then negative 7/3. Well, negative 7/3 is negative 2 and 1/3. So we'd have to go 2, 1, 2, and then 1/3 right about there. And we can't be really too much more precise than that, because that's about all we got for that point. F is going to be negative 2, comma 0. Negative 2 in the x direction and 0 in the y direction. So we've gone negative 2 for F. We've gone negative 2 in the x direction, and then 0, we've moved 0 in the y direction, so it's right on that line. For G, 0, 0 is going to be, well, 0 in the x direction and 0 in the y direction, means we don't move in the x direction and we don't move in the y direction, so there's our G point. And then finally, H, a little bit different, but really not too much different from letter E. Pi 1.1, pi in the x direction, 3.14, 1, 2, 3.14, a little bit farther, and then 1.1, 1.1, it's kind of written, we're going to have to write over that G point, but that would be right about there where our point letter H is, right about there. Alright, so there's some information on how to graph some points. If we're given the coordinates of points, then we can create those points on a rectangular coordinate system, just like taking the information from a graph, from a table, and creating a graph. All right, sometimes though we got to kind of go the other way and say, well, if we've got a graph, we've got to determine what points those points are, and kind of quantify that. We can't just say that there it is. We've got to say here's the quantification of it. So if I'm looking at this, I've got to say, well, I've got to measure for point number A. Here's our point number A, or point letter A, I guess. We've got to measure how far it is on the x direction and how far it is in the y direction to get here. So from the origin, I have to go negative 1 in the x direction. And again, if you need to put down x comma y, you sure can. We'll be using that pretty often. So it goes from the origin, negative 1 in the x direction, and then negative 1, negative 2, negative 3 in the y direction. So there's our point right there. So for B and C and D, we can also do the same thing. For B, we'd say, well, I've got to go negative 1, negative 2 in the x direction to get to that point. Negative 2. And then positive 1, 2, 3 in the y direction. So that would be positive 3. And we don't necessarily have to put a positive sign there. In fact, usually we would not put that positive sign there. We just have it as negative 2, comma 3. But just so I can say, for edification purposes, it's negative 2 in the x direction, or 2 in the negative direction for x, and then positive 3 that way. C is going to be, well, a little bit interpretation here, I suppose. Because for letter C, we're going to have to say, well, I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and maybe a half. And right now, we can't really judge too closely to what that is. So I'd say it's about 3.5. And then our y direction would be 1 and maybe a little bit more. So again, probably positive 1.5 for C. And go ahead and do D, and you can probably do these. I'm sure you've done these already So do D, pause the video, do D, and see what kind of coordinates you come up with, and we'll get together. Alright, so then for D, we have a positive 1 and about a half will get us to that D coordinate. So positive 1.5 for D, and then we've got to go from here, we've got to go negative 1, negative 2 in the Y direction. So negative, positive 1.5, negative 2 in the D direction. So there's our graphing points. Alright. And sometimes, finally, to wrap this one up, sometimes we're going to have some points. And we're going to say, and this will come in probably handy quite a bit in Math 141. We're going to say, here's a table of information. Here's, probably we won't give you that, probably we won't give you that, but we'll have to say, you know what, here's some observations of day number and temperature. Let's say we're out measuring the temperature of snowfalls, or temperature of the ground, and we're trying to coordinate some information with ground temperature and air temperature and growing plants or something like that. So we're gonna have some information like day number and temperature. Well, we really have to decide where we're going to put day number and where we're going to put temperature. Probably because the days are going to always kind of go step by step by step by step. It's always going to be Monday, and then Tuesday, and then Wednesday, and then Thursday, and then Friday, and then Saturday, etc. You get the idea. Temperature might fluctuate quite a bit, so our day number might be number 1, and number 2, and number 3, and number 4. This could be Monday, this could be Tuesday. But the day, because it's so regular, it should go on the x-axis right here. And then whatever's left over, the temperature, would go on the y-axis. So they did give you x and they gave you y, but I kind of wanted to give an idea about why you come up with x as the day number. So usually, again, the regular things like time, days, number of widgets that you create in a factory, that would go on the x-axis. So now, if we've got day number 1, our temperature was -3 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, we put in our x and y coordinates to come up with a point that's 1, -3. So we could graph, if we're going to graph this information, because again, if we're looking at a table like this, the information might not be easily interpretable. We might not get information as easily out of this information as it would from a graph. So that's why we're going to create a graph from this table. So here's our first point, 1, -3. 1 in the x direction, -1, -2, -3 in the y direction. Alright, so there's our first point. Next point is 2, -5. 2 in the x direction, -5 in the y direction. So we go 2 in the x direction from the origin. 1, 2 in the x direction. -5 in the y direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I see I'm starting to use magic ink. I don't know why it chose to use magic ink now. So let me go back to red, and we'll see if we can do red here. And there's my blue point going away. Alright, let's do 3, 1 for this one here. 3, 1, 2, 3. Day number 3 was 1 degree Fahrenheit. You can kind of get the idea. 4 or 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 was 6 degrees. And my red is hopefully sticking around. Let's see. This is my next point. 5, 5. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the x direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the y direction. Next point is 6, 0. 6 in the x direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 0. And then finally 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and -4. 1, 2, 3, 4, -4 in the y direction. So there's our graph. It looks like maybe a kind of a parabolic shape, maybe if we interpret it that way. But this way we can get, from the table, we can get the table information, and we can actually use day numbers or widgets or time or things like that on the x-axis, and whatever is left in the y-axis. And that's how you graph the information that way.